And welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. And joining me shortly will be Matthew Deagle, my oldest son. And Matthew is quite a character. He's very knowledgeable in many different areas. He made an excellent point last week about the issue that since the 1960s that we've had stopped cultural immigration and went to, quote, immigration based on skill sets. So, I can hear our board op, but I can't hear Matthew yet. So I guess the board op case will get him connected somehow. That was an excellent point. Matthew, are you there? I can't hear you very well, so you have to turn up the sound, I guess, a bit. Perhaps Keith at the board op there. Okay, good. So Matthew, we talked a bit about what happened with MoveOn.org and Black Lives Matter attacking. It appeared all the signs that were there were Hillary Clinton signs. Her organizations, by the way, directly support Black Lives Matter and MoveOn.org, which are tied to George Soros. So the corrupt cabal, including Hillary Clinton and I call the bipartisan, were out in full force trying to attack Trump. Now, the situation is he's the only candidate that's not kind of bought and paid for on either side. And of course they put signs up for Sanders, and of course Sanders has no tie to MoveOn.org or to Black Lives Matter. He has some black supporters because they want to have, education at a reasonable cost, which everybody does, and they want to have health care for everyone. We have literally 29.5 million people who have no insurance. And a lot of people can't afford it, including many people who are unemployed. The black unemployment rate is around 55% for black youth, which you'd think naturally they'd be supporting Trump. And a lot did. In fact, on the weekend, a young black gentleman in Chicago who actually just finished his MBA was about to set up a restaurant, had a big T-shirt with I support Trump and a sign. These thugs killed him. They actually shot and killed him at the Chicago rally where Trump didn't show up. So it gives you an idea just how insane the situation is and how we don't need to tolerate it. I think we need to treat all the addresses from now on by Trump as presidential addresses, that he has to have only a crowd on one side. He needs to have Kevlar between him and the crowd. He needs to have better security than the Secret Service, who were pretty sloppy, that led this guy to get through on Friday to attack him and grab his leg. He did have a knife. He does support ISIS, and he was sent by MoveOn.org. Even his Twitter account indicated that. They told us, other people told him to be safe. How safe can you be when you're attacking a presidential candidate and a stage with a knife? I mean, that's pretty insane. So it's not just a problem here in America. And Matthew, you've done some analysis of what's going on a global scale, and you have an amazing set of skills to bring forward and products that you provide on your website, MatthewDeagle.com. I'd like you to talk about all these issues and what you can provide to help people to sort out their own personal situation, their health, and to look at geopolitics and sports and everything else. Yeah, so we're still having connection troubles. I can hear. Yeah, I can hear Matthew, although he's not very loud. So maybe on your microphone, Matt, you maybe have to just turn it up a bit on your microphone button for your speaker. But I can't hear him, so he's very loud at all. He's very distant. Speak again, Matthew. I can't hear him at all now. Okay. So, see, Keith, if you need some help, get one of the other technicians to give you a hand there to try to get Matthew, his volumes up, because he's had a good Skype connection. In fact, he just finished his own show. He has a show over on Rents Network from 12 to 1, Monday to Friday. Let's have a look here at some of the latest news items that are going on. We'll look at Drudge is a good thing to see what's happening here. Soros Group raising funds from Trump protests, warns more disruption to come. I think George Soros needs to have a SWAT team on him. He needs to be swatted. So I can hear Matilda in the background, so I know.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you very well. Okay, Matthew, I want you to give us analysis of what you think happened. We can see Hillary signs all over this thing.
First of all, this guy, right? Tom DeMassimo.
Hold your microphone closer, because you were good for a second, and now you're.
Before he went and deleted a bunch of his tweets, he said he wanted to be a martyr.
Oh, really? Okay. Turn up. Put your microphone closer to you, because you're a little distant now. And
he was saying he wanted to be a martyr.
Let's reconnect by Skype, because somehow the connection was not good. Let's reconnect. I can't. It was really good for a second. Now it's gone. By the way, ICE 124 illegals freed from jail, later charged in 138 murder cases. Wow. That's up on Drudge. Yeah. Palin husband in a serious snow machine crash developing. So there's a terrible thing going on there.
Okay, now
a Democrat's question. Matthew, are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay, good. Speak up, because I want you to analyze what's going on with this Damasio guy that wanted to be a martyr.
My voice is a little weaker, but it shouldn't be that bad.
No, I can hear you well. Yeah, we had a volume problem before. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, so Tommy DeMassimo, this little jerk that tried to rush the stage at the Trump rally, he, if you go to his Twitter account, before they deleted a bunch of his tweets, or he deleted them, I guess, he had a picture of him flipping off the camera after he got out of jail on his $300 bail. He had a previous post where he said he wanted to be a martyr. He did a video, he did a demonstration, I think, last year where he was standing on an American flag and saying it's my right to stand on this flag. He's basically just, he's like the literal embodiment. Have you ever seen that South Park episode with the PC bros? He's like a real-life PC bro, this, like, works out 3 days a week or whatever, and then the rest of the week he protests in favor of SJW causes. I don't know. Whatever the case, the guy's a jerk. But I don't know about ISIS ties. I mean, there was a video produced where somebody overlaid the song Cellulose Sawarim with him on the flag. I mean, it doesn't matter, really, because what I do is I follow the overall cultural trends involved in these events.
And how do you do that, Matthew? Because you're not just doing a geopolitical analysis. You're doing numerological, astrological, and other analysis.
Yeah, I'm doing a symbolic
converge all this.
To see
so let's look at this. And you provide services that allow people to do it on their own personal situation, their birth date, their health, geopolitical issues,
I do. I have a full on my website, MatthewDeagle.com. You can see I have personal astrological and numerological services.
And these are based on biblical principles. The old biblical astrology.
They're based on natural laws, right? They're just based on
the same laws as Moses used when he understood that it was a time to release the Hebrews. That's why we came back from the desert of Midian.
All ancient farmers used to use astrology. It's just based on seasonal cycles and just facts of nature. What things symbolically mean.
Okay, so firstly, tell us what your analysis of the situation is, because we see George Soros. He was thrown out of Russia. All his NGOs were thrown out of Russia in the last year and a half, 2 years. We have the situation here where Soros and the Black Lives Matter organization, tied directly to Hillary Clinton, are trying to disrupt and also to blame Sanders' organization for it, because a lot of Sanders sign there was only like one sign for Hillary Clinton. So they're obviously trying to tie this violence somehow between Sanders and, which I know absolutely had nothing to do with it.
Well, it's all silly, but I mean, the thing is, you have to realize what's been going on since 1844 here, is that we're in the age of Aquarius, which also means that the lunar is stronger. The positive side of that is the desire to get rid of the actually bad, to make positive changes and revolutions. The negative side of that is just the hateful, revolutionary, paranoid, like destroy everything that went before you mentality. The mentality of Islamists and Marxists. So basically, I see Islamists, right, like ISIS, as being of the same basic nature symbolically and energetically as, say, Karl Marx. In fact, Karl Marx has similar astrology rising. Similarly, he's very lunar, just like Abu Bakr. I don't think this is so much a communist concern, right? Because during the McCarthy era, there was a lot of paranoia about communists. Meanwhile, academia and the media were being thoroughly taken over by cultural Marxists. So really, I mean, Marxism is the threat here, not communism or socialism per se. And in fact, one of the big boogeymen, the biggest boogeyman that Marxists hate and use to justify Marxism as a prevention thereof is fascism, right? Well, by fascism, they really just mean National Socialism, which in turn
just means... Matt, we'll be back in just a moment. I'm coming up to a bumper, and we'll be back in a moment with Matthew, and he'll explain also a lot of the other services he provides, a lot of the analysis, and why this is a fulcrum time in history and also dangerous.
Do you have difficulty?
Yes, and Matthew, now let's analyze what's going on here. Because
as I said, this is all.
What's the genesis, for example, of Black Lives Matter? You mentioned it ties some cultural Marxism.
Yes, this is all manifestations of the ill-dignified lunar on a collective level. It's all the manifestations of one astrological energy or life energy, which is an excess of the bladder channel and an excess of the large intestine channel, i.e. an excess of the desire for relief, the excess of the desire to eliminate and destroy things, an excess of pity as well as self-pity, which is both the mentality and the main target of these campaigns by cultural Marxists. You see this with, for instance, Black Lives Matter. There's a legitimate basis for Black Lives Matter, right? The basis of Black Lives Matter is that blacks are shot dead for the stupidest reasons by cops all the time.
Or put in jail for ridiculous reasons, too. 10 or 12 times more for smoking marijuana. And, of course, that's why Hillary won't respond to the idea of 3 strikes, because sometimes it's a black person that smoked dope 3 times in public, or maybe had an ounce of a gram on their hand, and they end up going to prison for 30 years.
Well, then here she is, obviously, here she is, praising Nancy Reagan, who was behind the drug war and everything. But basically, Black Lives Matter has been hijacked, as well as any other group, African American group, except for maybe the ones based on kind of fringe ideas like Nation of Islam or whatever. Most of these groups.
It's very interesting, by the way, that Nation of Islam actually supports Donald Trump. As well
Farrakhan does. But I mean, the main thing to realize is that, yes, police brutality and racism are problems for blacks, but the main problem in this country, I think, is the culture. Black culture has degenerated so much in the past 50 to 60 years. It's incredible. And what is the main cause of that? The main cause of the spread of bad music, bad language, negative and selfish attitudes, materialism. It's basically the music industry. The music industry promotes people who are talentless, promotes people who are thugs and aggressive, promotes all this negative music with negative lyrics and very bad negative harmonies, disharmonious music, while they actively suppress good and harmonious music, including African American artists. For example, Michael Jackson was actively slandered by his own agencies, actively not promoted in the USA while being popular all around the world. Michael Jackson's albums, mostly since the 90s, sold better in international audiences like in Europe and Japan than they did in the USA. Now, why is that? Michael Jackson had bigger concerts sometimes in foreign countries than here. It's because America, unfortunately, right now, when people think about Americanization, it's not really any American culture that's being promoted around the world by the CIA. It isn't even any particular American dialect. They aren't promoting some particular regional culture. They're promoting cultural Marxism. See, while the Soviet Union was the main promoter and spreader of economic Marxist policies, because their attitude toward Marxism was to force an economic change toward collectivism, the cultural Marxists have a more feminine approach to Marxism. They want to begin with manipulation and undermining of culture, and from that create anarchy, which then gives an opportunity to seize power. You see? That's what they've been doing, and the main thing to blame, in my opinion, for the terrible conditions that many blacks live in this country, is simply the very negative, destructive, materialistic culture which is promoted by the music industry and promoted by many other policies which seem intended to degrade their culture.
Exactly. That's why you have, for example, some men in prison have 20 or 24 honor babies, where the mothers are sending part of their Social Security check to the man in prison, who's the father of their child.
Yeah, in fact,
Social Services doesn't pay a woman if she has 2 or 3 or 4 different children from different fathers. If they have a man in the house. So in other words, the social services system is set up specifically to make sure you don't have a stable mother-father family relationship, and with
it's all a Marxist experiment. I mean, basically, they destroy families in black communities. They make sure they don't have fathers. They make sure that they don't really have any family per se. They just have gangs in place of families, right? And the gangs are all manipulated. Allegedly, even the drugs were brought in by the CIA.
Of course they are. That's why when I hear Donald Trump, the only thing that the wall will stop, and it will stop it, because we can't tolerate 100 million immigrants from poor countries coming to America without control. Think about it. I mean, what is right now the most popular form of music, even among white youth, is
is bad hip hop and bad R&B based.
Right, but here's the point. What Trump doesn't realize, he may, because he's a pragmatist and a problem solver. Once he digs in, he's going to realize that when he gave a promise to the people in New Hampshire to stop the flow of heroin. By the way, it's not coming in from the Mexican border. It's coming in with C-130s with U.S. military bases like Aurora, Colorado, where I took care of.
Oh yeah, it used to be coming in directly from Colombia.
Directly, I mean, they're talking about heroin coming in from the Golden Triangle, coming in. Yeah. You're coming in from Afghanistan and elsewhere by U.S. military, with the CIA, et cetera.
As soon as we finished our job in Afghanistan, the heroin production went up several.
260%, yeah. And of course, they made sure they maintained the drug trade, and we wouldn't interfere with the. Well,
I mean, you have to ask yourself who's really
tribal
behind
areas.
this. I think it's pretty simple. As I said, cultural Marxists, in contrast to Soviet-style communists, right? Cultural Marxists focus mostly on culture and on music and on the media, with the goal of undermining any traditions, undermining any traditional morality, and undermining any kind of traditional identity, and replacing it with a homogeneous materialistic culture that can be more easily controlled.
Right.
Basically because that creates a crisis, right, an anarchic crisis that then demands some solution, and the solution is, in their minds, their Marxist socialism.
Right.
Now, I think that this accounts for most of the evil activities of the CIA. When you think about it, first of all, the CIA and NSA recruit from academia. Academia was already thoroughly infiltrated by Marxists by the 1950s and 60s.
Right.
Most of the NSA consists of people recruited from math and departments, whereas most people in the CIA are recruited from, for example, language departments, people who are or foreign culture departments. Many of which are left-wing liberal arts Marxists. Now, you can trace this all back again to the Frankfurt School with Max Horkheimer, etc., who basically openly praised the Marquis de Sade, etc. They believe in destroying all traditional culture, destroying all spiritual values, replacing all national boundaries with unions like the European Union. It all goes back to them. And, I mean, you can even trace it back further to the Rothschilds and then Richard Coudenhove-Kalergi, who was also one of the founders of the idea of a pan-European society and raceless society.
Well, that's what they're trying to do right now. I think they're trying to force the Europeans to have such a violent counter-response to this massive immigration of very backward Muslims that are, we call...
Well, their delusional belief is that if the Muslims are all assimilated into European society...
They won't be assimilated. They can't be, and they haven't been in France for years. The point is they want to create this backlash so they create Fortress Europe. They want to get rid of all national boundaries and make it Fortress Europe is what they want to do.
I mean, yeah, they want a crisis to justify
a job that
I laid out a lot of these issues. It's pretty obvious that we're dealing with... It's not just, by the way, a problem here in America. These issues are being played out in other countries. You have a number of...
Well, obviously, I mean, the CIA can't be a problem just in America because it's everywhere.
Right.
And as I said, the CIA was a disaster from the beginning because the National Security Act essentially gave it powers beyond the president. So already we have an intelligence network that goes beyond presidential executive powers. An intelligence network that can do whatever it wants without even telling the president. Now, when you mix in that and the fact that most of the recruits to the CIA come from academia, which in turn is heavily infiltrated by Marxist extremists, it's pretty obvious what's been going on here. Is that we have a struggle between the Office of President, the Pentagon, which is the military, and the CIA. There's not really one government in this country. There are three governments. And one of those three governments is arguably trying to push a Marxist global empire. I think that's the reason why we see so much nonsensical aggression and revolution throughout the Middle East.
We know the CIA directly trained ISIS and ISIL in Jordan 4 years ago in a town north of Amman with Israeli. It was collaboration with Israeli Mossad. And we know this is a fact. I mean, my friend Barry Chalmers, who's Jewish, actually has all kinds of contacts inside Israel and elsewhere to prove this. So it's not open to people's opinion.
I mean, some people think the Zionists are behind all this, but that's not really true. I mean,
no, it's not. No.
There is an overrepresentation of Jews among Marxists, but the reason for that is that Judaism is already a fringe religion. They're never part of mainstream society, and so Jews are more likely to join fringe cults like Marxism than other people, because there's nothing else to go to. You see, once they leave Judaism, they feel already separate from the culture, and then they go to something like Marxism. Consequently, a lot of Jews were early Marxists, right? In fact, the Frankfurt School consisted
which is why the kibbutzes were basically a form of Marxism, aren't they?
Yeah, but don't think Marxists are friendly to Israel. I mean, look at the European Union wants to recognize Palestine as a state. However, on the other side, the theocrats are also crazy, okay? I mean, Ted Cruz and the Zionists are also crazy. They want to start World War III, but they're not the same thing as the Marxists. And the Marxists are much more powerful, in my opinion, and much more long-term dangerous. The two main, I see what's happened over time. I see the slow erosion of Christianity and possibly even its total phasing out as a large-scale religion. On the other hand, Marxism and Islamism, I think, will continue to grow.
Yeah, you can see that happening because Marxism and Islamism have made a dark alliance to force this quote New World Order on the whole planet. And
however,
that's why
part of what's to blame for that, though, is that people like Ted Cruz are not very good Christians, if even Christians at all. They're heretics, right? I mean, the Republican Party believes in greed and unfairness as a doctrine. They believe in usury as a doctrine. They're totally dead set against any of the traditional Christian morals of charity and forgiveness. They're a revengeful and bloodthirsty, greedy cult. So, I mean, it's partly their fault anyway. But so I'm not a big fan. I don't know if you can paint it.
I don't know if you can paint it totally. For example, when I heard the response of Trump, which is a businessman, he's concerned about black and others that don't have jobs too, because he knows you can't have a stable society or if you.
I'm not talking about Trump. The Republican Party hates Trump, right? Why do they hate Trump? Because I mean, listen to how fanatical and extreme they are. Trump says he wants to hear the other side of the story in Israel, and then Ted Cruz calls that relativistic morality. These people are nuts as well, right? I mean, we have lots of different nutty cults. Essentially, the big threat to humanity is that there's lots of different insane, false religions, including Marxism, which is, yes, a religion. It's not a political movement. Fundamentally, it's a religion. It is It is, in fact, I would say, the doctrine religion, the main religion of our universities, and arguably has also strong representation in the Catholic Church. For instance, the Jesuits.
Absolutely.
Certainly is a driving religion in the European Union, and definitely the European Union is all based on Marxist beliefs. The belief that the cause, for instance, of war is supposedly nationalism, that supposedly having national borders and individual national cultures is the reason why the world wars happened. Well, that's not really the reason at all. The reason the world wars happened is because bankers funded both sides and stirred up both world wars, right?
Exactly.
In fact, the same bankers who funded Marxism as well.
Exactly. Now, you tell us about some of the services you provide, because you have on your website, MatthewDaigle.com, a number of things you can do that are very unique, and you have a number of algorithms and things you've discovered in your many years of research.
I have some simple logical formulas. You know, most astrologers out there are just using half intuition and half what's actually there. I try to use a rigorous formula based on my empirical research. I've narrowed down and deduced things that I don't think are effective, and I focus on things that actually have an observable result. So, first of all, my astrology is all based on logic and universal laws of logic. Secondly, it is based on a simple formula that I can calculate for anybody to find out what symbols govern their life based on their astrology, right? There are other sources of symbols as well.
Yeah, symbology is tied, by the way, to the fact that our world is in a sense, a holographic universe that is governed by higher levels of symbology in the realm of consciousness or soul.
Basically, I can
reality.
find out. I can find out using. I can find out some of the main symbols that influence your character and your life, such as your name, which is a huge influence on you, as well as the time you're born. So that's what I mean by astrology. I mean, really, astrology is an ancient science, and it was developed to quite a high level in ancient Rome. But we don't know about that to very good detail anymore because most of the ancient Roman astrology texts were burned by the Christian fanatics. So the early Christians were like the Marxists of their day. Don't think that they were some kind of positive revolution or some kind of spreading of the teachings of Christ. They basically devoted themselves to destroying traditional knowledge and cultures, just like the Marxists want to do today, to establish a new world order of a kind. So the main thing we've been suffering from for about 2,000 years has been one after another heretical, fanatical, and false religion hell-bent on world domination and power that has no regard for cultures and wants to wipe away everything that it sees as inferior or as You know, I mean, it's funny that they label the Nazis as being like the essence of that, when really Marxists are far worse, and so is ISIS, right? ISIS doesn't just ISIS executes people left and right, just indiscriminately, just for being a slightly different version of Islam.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's amazing. So, and they're tolerated by these other Muslims because most Muslims are too passive to actually stop this tiny percentage of extreme element.
Yeah, but as I said, yeah, what's going on with these Black Lives Matter people is they're basically brainwashed by propaganda. It's all totally skewed information.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because it's very negative for themselves.
They'll say because Trump has them pledge allegiance while raising the right hand, which, by the way, is the way you used to pledge allegiance in the USA, and it's still the way you make a pledge, right? When you swear an oath over the Bible, it's not uncommon to raise your right hand, but that supposedly means he's like Hitler. Right, bullshit.
Oh yeah, that's ridiculous.
It's nonsense. And then on the other hand, you have them saying that he's affiliated with the KKK because David Duke goes on his radio show and says to vote for Trump. Meanwhile, they totally ignore the fact that one of his best friends is Mike Tyson, who is a black Muslim who also endorses Trump. Like, right, Mike Tyson is a black Muslim who endorses Trump. How do you explain him being in the KKK fitting with that?
Yeah,
meanwhile,
no.
Louis Farrakhan,
not only that, you have to understand that David Duke is not a KKK member now.
No, he was out of the KKK. He was out of the KKK 40 years ago. Anyway, I mean,
40 years. But he's also run for political office. What he mainly does for his opponents is he actually uses quote marks of what they say. So he was
elected. I think he was a representative in the Louisiana House of Representatives. So I mean, the guy was a Republican politician endorsing another Republican politician. It's not that big of a surprise. But besides that, I mean, Louis Farrakhan, who is the leader of a black Muslim movement, all right? A movement which previously has had explicit black supremacist doctrines saying that white people are the creation of an evil scientist and stuff like that, right? So, I mean, it's the exact opposite of the KKK. What, are you going to say that Donald Trump hates white people now because Louis Farrakhan endorses?
It's too bizarre, isn't it? Yeah.
But it's clearly a mass manipulation, and it's kind of scary to see how much of the media is on board with this.
Well, people need more information to make right decisions. I want you to expand on some of the services you offer, because I think both dealing on a geopolitical level, on a personal level, on a health level, you can do analysis that can tell people where their weaknesses are and their strengths, where society is its weaknesses and strengths, and what's driving our current culture.
Yeah, I can certainly.
I think there's a very unique services that you offer that I think can make people make better decisions in their life, make better geopolitical decisions, make better understanding of what's going on. You have, for example, a name and birthday analysis, full natal analysis, health analysis, life questions, advice, electional astrology. I'm not sure exactly what that term means. Financial astrology. And more mundane. Can you explain what those mean?
All right, so a name and birth date analysis is only $50, and that's when you can go to my website, MatthewDeagle.com. That's MatthewDeagle.com. You can find the link on my Rents Radio website. Just go to the hosts on rentsradio.com. You'll find the link right there. The name and birth date analysis basically is just where I take your name and the date of birth, and I tell you based on that what sort of symbols are influencing you. Your full natal analysis is
in other words. And the symbology, of course, can have effects on decisions and so on. Okay.
It has massive effects because our subconscious mind is about twice as intelligent as our conscious mind. It is also part of a collective. So I've observed over the years, reading the news and following conspiracies and things, I think this is really what's in control of the overall current of human society. That's why you see similar things manifesting at the same time. We simultaneously have our version of the ill-dignified lunar in the West, Marxism, and in the East they have their version, Islamism, or ISIS. So, again, it's the same basic
nature. You're dealing with a collective consciousness of mankind as a multicellular organism, is what you're saying.
Yeah, an individual human is an organism, but so is the collective, also an organism with its own life energy channels that can similarly be out of balance. So a full natal analysis is where I don't just look at your name and your birth date, but I look more specifically at the exact time you were born to find out what seasonal and other astrological influences predominate. which can tell you about all sorts of things: your character, your constitution, your health tendencies, your psychological tendencies.
Now, you do a bit more of that on the health analysis. Now, remember the
the health analysis is where I go further if you take the full natal analysis as a prerequisite. I can do a health analysis for the full natal analysis is $150. The health analysis is an extra $100 on top of that to address a specific issue, where then I will refer you to someone, a medical doctor such as Nutrimedical, for example, to get some kind of advice, or I will tell you, or to an acupuncturist to get a specific acupuncture channel acupunctured, because I will look up specific acupuncture points, and I will look up specifically what
because the body is a bioplasmatic body, and by the way, there's also not only an individual but a collective. For example, I've been able to do proxy QRMA tests, even people thousands of miles away, and people say, how's that possible? I say, we're a collective organism. Besides being individuals, we're also collective. And people need to also realize there's weakness points that are passed on epigenetically and bioenergetically as well.
Even just culturally, like if you listen to this bad music that is popular on the radio right now, it can actually affect your health and psyche negatively. An intelligent person can be significantly dumbed down just by listening to the crap music that's on the radio.
Right.
I'm telling you, things that's basically the main lesson of this astrology and symbolic analysis of culture is that the really supposedly innocuous things in our society are some of the most powerful and dangerous. Things like music and language. I recommend people do not, no matter how naively you think it's catchy or whatever, don't listen to the stuff that's being promoted currently on the radio. Don't listen to those popular artists. The vast majority of them are part of this cultural Marxist agenda. They are often talentless people who are intentionally used as vessels for whatever the producers want to make.
Yeah, that's why it links up there about
God knows
are some of these people. Are some of these people called Illuminati? I guess is the term they try to use. But
well, I think Illuminati is also disinformation, because remember, Illuminati is an old secret society from the 18th century.
What I'm saying is that
they've been defunct for
Illuminati, but they're selected to be the how can I say it? The callers and the infiltrators and the modulators of society's culture.
It's not the Illuminati, it's Marxist.
No, it doesn't have to be. Yeah, Marxist, exactly. And you have also life questions and advice analysis. You're talking about if somebody has a major decision to make, or election. What's an electional astrology? What does that mean?
Well, electional astrology doesn't have to do with a campaign or anything. It has to do with electing a specific time to do something. There's a description under each product, but it's basically electing a good, opportune time to do something in particular based on...
Maybe like launching a business or doing a certain thing.
Launching a business or any particular activity.
Travel, whatever, yeah.
Which is in harmony with the influences of the time. So I find a time which is in harmony with the influences active through culture, dates, symbolism, astrology.
Now, if you go back to Jonathan Gray's book called The Sting of the Scorpion, which I tell people to get, it talks about many of these things you're talking about, but that in fact our world actually had, in a sense, a holographic analysis of the star charts and so on that would give mankind an understanding of the nature of what reality was. Because
basically everything is part of a kind of harmony with everything else, and so the really big things like the positions of planets do affect the Earth, because they're all part of one life energy system. The solar system is in fact itself a life energy system with channels, you might say, and each planet has its own tone. Really, it's not the planets themselves, but the tone they give off based on their evolution of life or their atmosphere, their composition, which causes a specific impulse to come from them. So, for instance, you look at a planet like Mercury, and it basically has what symbolically is red, or the note of G on a piano. It therefore has what we call the mercurial influence. It's the same with all the planets. And I can, so basically it's not about any particular planet. Two different planets can have the same effect, right? Two different things can have the same symbolic effect. And there's many different things involved, but these planets in their oscillations or their orbits do actually create kind of seasons in which certain influences reach a peak and a trough. Just like a wave, right? It goes up to its maximum.
Well, that's why they use the term lunacy, because when certain lunar cycles or signs are present, they used to call it lunacy because they'd see a lot more people.
It's funny you mentioned lunacy, because that's the exact word I've been using. I think it's accurate to describe the excessively lunar ideologies like mass immigration, multiculturalism, Marxism, and Islamism. All these things are excessively lunar, which means that they desire an extreme purge of all that which they see as bad and the destruction of boundaries and loyalties. The other services I offer are financial astrology, which means that I give you advice on what sort of thing to invest in, or on your particular investment, whether to buy or sell, for example, stock. Because basically, at any given time, the position of planets or the season also influences what is going to be more desirable, what's going to be more expensive. There's many other influences, of course, but astrology is a strong influence.
Have you done any analysis of...
I have a book by Lieutenant Commander... Huh?
Have you done any analysis? I'm sorry to interrupt you there. Have you done any analysis on what's going on with our current economy? And answer that afterward, but go ahead. You had a comment about it, Colonel.
Obviously there's more influences than just basic astrology, but overall, as I said, we're in the age of Aquarius, which means that excessively lunar tendencies are a big danger right now, which means religious fanaticism like ISIS, as well as what I would call also cultic or religious fanaticism in the form of Marxism. The last service I provide is mundane astrology, which means astrology of world events, where if a person wants to know about any particular world event, such as a political situation, I can tell them about that as well. Everything is influenced by astrology as well as names and dates.
So if you're looking at the mundane events, for example, right now, the rise, I don't think there's been an election like this since maybe Ronald Reagan. Where there's been, and this is probably exceeds that in terms of the amount of potential violence, danger, and controversy going on in this election cycle. Basically, most of the people, I'm looking at articles from Drudge, are just totally fed up with what's happening in the cycle. Why Washington's political class is losing control.
Part of what's going on here is that we have these people like Ted. On one side, we have the Marxists who want to have their utopia, which, however, requires first destroying all traditions and creating anarchy. On the other hand, we have religious fanatics like Ted Cruz with their heretical beliefs that are not based on any real thorough reading of the Bible or any logic. They're just delusions, like the rapture, for example. They believe that they're all going to disappear into a neatly folded pile of clothing instead of having to experience the tribulation they bring on themselves. Well, actually, if Ted Cruz starts World War III, he's not going to disappear into the sky. He's going to have to suffer like the rest of us. In fact, the rapture itself is derived from one of the Pauline epistles, which are, in general, I think, very unreliable parts of the Bible. St. Paul himself is questionable in general, but the Pauline epistles in particular are quite questionable parts of the Bible. So it's
we know that rapture stuff is, to me, and I've said this over many times,
and I mean, it's foolishness. It's a very loose interpretation even of St. Paul's words, saying that we're going to be caught up in
it's not. It doesn't even follow logic. You know, if God wants the people on the earth 1,000 years from now, if they're all quote raptured off, where are they going to come from?
Well, the other thing is that also Revelation does not prophesy the end of the world, right? It's not true.
No. Revelation is the apocalypse.
The apocalypse is not the end of the world. The apocalypse is actually just the beginning of the age of Aquarius, which means that right now these evolutionary impulses are very strong. There are positive changes happening in our society.